Bonjour classe. Vous avez de la chance. You are very lucky. We are going to go over the difference between the imparfait and the passé composé, the imperfect and the passé composé. Today we are just going to do part 1, partie 1, l'imparfait, the imperfect. In this video, I will not be going over how to form the imparfait. Remember, we've already done that before. So if you need more details, I will post the PowerPoint that we've done. Just a reminder though, you take the new form minus the ONS, so you take off the ONS of the verb in the new form in the present tense. Then you add these endings. So for je, it's AIS. For tu, it's AIS. For il, elle, and on, it's AIT. For nous, it's IONS. For vous, it's IEZ. And for ils and elles, it's AIENT. So we have A, ion, ie, a. I will have other documents up on these platforms for you to see as well. So you should have this document that's pictured here. If you don't, pause the video, get a copy of it, or get something to take notes on. I will post that up on Google Classroom or on Edsby as well. Today, we are going to be looking at the difference when you use, when to choose when you use the imparfait or the passé composé. Remember, they're both our past tense, but we need to decide when we're going to choose to use the imparfait and when we're going to use the passé composé. We've gone over some of the basics, but let's look at these in more depth. Today, we'll look at the imparfait. So here's the imparfait. L'imparfait, c'est un temps au passé. It's a tense in the past, and it is used for several reasons, It's used to give background information, and a lot of times that is to make a description of a scene, of what's going on, or what people are doing, or what's going on around you. For example, les enfants regardaient par la fenêtre, ils voyaient un défilé qui passait dans la rue. Now I want you to take a look at this sentence, see if you can identify the imperfect verbs, and see if you can figure out what they mean. Also, see if you understand exactly what the whole sentence means. And make sure that you pause the video at any time. I might not remind you to do so, but pause it when you need to take notes or need to answer questions. So let's look at the imperfect verbs. We've got regarder, we've got voyer, and we've got passer. So this is telling the scene. This is telling what was going on. This, a lot of times, could be the beginning of a story or the beginning of a tale. So the children were looking out the window. They were seeing a parade that was going down the street. Now let's look at another way we would use the imparfait, to talk about continuous action. In fact, that's what the imperfect is. It's an action that's not finished. So let's look at an example. Valentin travaillait pendant des heures pour finir ce projet. Again, you have the imperfect, and try and see if you understand what the sentence means. So we have travailler. So Valentine, or Valentino, was working for hours to finish the project, or worked for hours to finish the project. This is something that went on. It was continuous. Another way that we use the imparfait is for an interrupted action, an action that's going on when something else occurs and interrupts it. Now this gets a little bit tricky because a lot of times we use the passé composé, in fact, almost always, to interrupt this action. Let's look at a sentence. So, je courais au parc quand une fille m'a appelé. So you see that we have an imparfait and a passé composé. Look at the sentence and see if you can understand why and what's going on. So we have courir for the imperfect. Okay, I was running in the park. That's the action that's going on. You can also think of that as the continuous action. But then you have an action that's abrupt, that's in the passé composé. Une fille m'a appelé. A girl called me. And that is in the passé composé. That action is interrupting the action that was going on. Past. But also physical descriptions or describing things are in the past. It can be a physical description, okay, or it can be one of personality or spirit. Let's look at some examples. So here we have an example of describing a person. We have personality and physical descriptions. Look at this and look at the verbs. So we have été and avait. So my cousin was nice and a brunette, and he had green eyes. I'd also like to point out that a lot of times être and avoir are used in the imparfait when using the past. That might be a good thing to write down and to make sure that you try and use it because you'll be right at least 90% of the time. Now we're down to le temps and l'heure, the weather and time. Let's look at some examples. Il faisait beau, il était 8 heures du matin, il pleuvait et il était midi. So I want you to look at these 4 sentences and I want you to decide which ones talk about the weather and which ones talk about the time. Again, you should pause the video here to answer those questions. Alors le temps. Which ones are showing weather? So I have il faisait beau and il pleuvait. And we have the verb faire, faisait, pleuvoir, pleuvait. So il faisait beau, it was nice outside. Il pleuvait, it was raining. Remember, these are also ways to give background information, give a scene, and to describe the weather. And l'heure, which ones are telling the time? Il était 8 heures du matin and il était midi. It was 8 o'clock in the morning, it was noon. Again, setting the scene, giving background information, describing. So the last one is age. When we tell someone's age in the past, we use the imperfect. It's also giving a description of someone. And can you remember what verb you use to tell someone's age? Let's look at an example. J'avais 18 ans, il avait 80 ans. Now, do you notice which verb we use for telling age? Yes, we always use avoir. So, I was 18 years old, and he was 80 years old. Maintenant, conjuguez les verbes suivants et dites pourquoi chaque verbe est à l'imparfait. Now it's your turn. You're going to conjugate each of these verbs in number 1 through 7, and you're going to say why they are in the imparfait. Use your notes for this. And we have an example for you, vous and avoir les cheveux châtains. So to conjugate that in the imparfait, we would have vous aviez les cheveux châtains. And one of the reasons is c'est un état physique. It's a physical state or a physical description. Okay? So do 1 through 7. Answer both of those questions for each one, and that you will turn in. When you're finished with that, then I want you to continue. I have a few more things to tell you that might help you with some key expressions. So some of our key expressions that can help you figure out that that the verb that you're going to conjugate is in the imparfait. We have autrefois, which we used a lot already, which means formerly or in the past, because we're going to talk about things that happened before on a regular basis. Chaque, if you ever see chaque mois, chaque année, chaque jour, each. A lot of times we also say every in English. Every month, every year, every day. Now also, if you see expressions like d'habitude and habituellement, these are things that you did usually. We have the word habit in English to help you remember that. Now, if you see en général, although we are missing some accents there. Okay, en général, what you generally did, tout le temps, what you did all the time, and anytime you see tout and an expression of time, like tous les jours, tous les mois, so every day, every month, okay, tout means all, but in English, when we use these expressions, we use every, like tous les weekends, every weekend. Now, this is a little bit more complicated for us. Expressions that have le, expressions of days or times, like le weekend, le matin, l'après-midi, le lundi, le mardi. So let me go from top to bottom. Le lundi, le mardi. In English, we would say on Monday or on Mondays, on Tuesdays, on Wednesdays. But in French, we just put le in front of it. That's something that you regularly did on a Monday. Okay, le matin, l'après-midi, le weekend, same idea. Okay, things that you did in the morning, in the afternoon, or on the weekend, on a regular basis. So, bravo. Okay, on a fini. We finished the imperfect part. I might have an exercise for extra practice for you, but we will wait and we will look at le passé composé demain. Okay? Thank you for all your hard work.